Hey guys, welcome back. It's Sports with Mono and Mono. And I'm Jim, and I'm here with my partner Steve.
Hi, everybody. Welcome back to the show.
And thanks for joining us. And we got a lot of stuff to talk about. So we're going to start off with some prominent news in the NHL. It was a passing of, I guess, what you would call him a pioneer,
Yeah, no doubt.
right? Ted Lindsay.
Ted Lindsay, terrible Ted Lindsay. So it kind of goes to our theme of mentioning notable passings throughout the sports world, and
Yeah.
we honestly think Ted Lindsay deserves recognition. He passed away within the week at age 93. For our hockey fans, Ted played with Gordie Howe on the Detroit Red Wings from 1944 to 57.
Yep.
So he was part of what's called the production line back then of Gordie Howe and Sid Abel.
And boy, were these were some tough characters.
Oh, they were. That's when anything went in hockey. Let me tell you something. His nickname was Terrible Ted.
It was It was UFC on skates back then, right?
There was no doubt, and he was like a small guy, but real tough and ornery.
Yep.
And we wanted to shout out to him. He, in fact, made the Hall of Fame. He's a pioneer of hockey. He had 851 career points, 379 goals, and
Four cups.
He won 4 cups.
Yep.
What I thought was funny too, get back to the UFC thing, is that he had 1,808 career penalty minutes. Well, if you do the math, it equates to sitting in a penalty box for literally 30 games. So,
Yep.
so we wanted to throw that out there as a bona fide Hall of Fame hockey player who represented hockey for a long time.
Oh, and toughness, beyond. And like I said, he tutored Gordie Howe, I guess.
Oh yeah,
Gordie carried on his legacy for.
Gordie could elbow with the best of them too.
Right.
But Ted Lindsay, just reading about him, he said he was born a poor loser, and he was famous for never ever speaking to opposing players. He was all business on the ice.
Oh.
And
God.
then to finish with him, it was a funny story because he got traded in his career. I think he played 3 years with the Blackhawks.
Yeah.
So when his first came back to Detroit against Gordie Howe, Ted Lindsay cracked Gordie Howe over the head with his stick, and then Gordie Howe dropped the gloves and literally kicked the crap out of Ted Lindsay. And the quote was that, Gordie looked at Lindsay and said to him, he goes, "Really, Ted? Really? You really want to do this?" And then Lindsay just walked away. He told Gordie, he goes, "Listen, we've been friends too long. It's not worth it." But, we just, again, the notable passing, we wanted to honor Ted Lindsay.
Oh, it's no question about it. Absolutely, he was tough. He was Braveheart on skates back then. William Wallace.
Absolutely,
Right?
no doubt.
So let's stick with hockey for a minute and two. And there was a big win in the NHL from a coaching perspective the other day, and Steve and I were just talking about this. Barry Trotz got his 800th win as an NHL head coach. So immediately we said, okay, well, we know Scotty Bowman is the all-time winner, right? I mean, who's better than him?
Unquestioned, Scotty Bowman.
Right. So, my second guess was Al Arbor, which I was wrong. Al had about 790 or something, came very close.
Okay.
So we were talking about, Scotty, and then, who are the two guys between him and Trotz right now? And, Steve came up with one, which was tough because to me, I remember watching this guy play.
Joel Quenneville.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So he coached, obviously, with the Chicago Blackhawks, and it's uncanny how certain names like that have just crept up the list of all-time wins, but,
And the other
been
guy
behind the bench a long time. As the years go by, the wins pile up, and you're on good teams. It's really not surprising, but that's kind of a tough thing to pull out. Who are the top 4 all-time wins leaders?
Right, and who's the one we left out, which was surprising. I don't think either one of us or anybody would get it. Was Ken Hitchcock.
Ken Hitchcock.
Probably coached for 5 different teams. So he compiled a lot of wins over many years.
Oh
but,
yeah. So I think when I think of Ken Hitchcock, I think of the Dallas Stars, right?
Yeah.
With him, so he
that's
won the cup with the Stars.
Yes, he
He had
did.
Madonna on that team.
That was him.
That was a good team.
Yep. So that's that was pretty interesting. How about Barry Trotz and what he's bringing to the Islanders? It's pretty awesome.
Yeah, we talked about it on the last show.
Yeah.
With Lamoriello and Barry Trotz in the catbird seats there. Good news for Islander fans going forward.
We talked about whether or not losing Tavares was a big thing, but they got a lot of young talent that's really formidable, and they're looking pretty good.
Well, they should. I mean, they've been in the basement for the last 20 years. They've had high draft picks, and some of these kids are really starting to produce now. But that's the formula, right? To get out of the doghouse and hit on your picks. So.
And we're winding down to the NHL season, so like I said, what always amazed me about the NHL, these guys play 82 games, and then they get to the playoffs, and it's quite possible they could play.
They can play an
32 games, right?
Right.
I mean,
right. Something ridiculous.
Amazing. It's almost like it's a third of a season in the playoffs.
There's no question.
Nothing tougher than hockey on that front.
And I was just thinking, I was just looking at the standings. The Rangers had played Tampa Bay within the week. Tampa Bay, man, their record 48-11 going into that game. As I was getting ready to do the show, I was kind of, we'll talk about as the Stanley Cup playoffs get closer and who we predict and so on. But I got to tell you, I think I'm leaning towards Tampa Bay. Their goaltender is rock solid. This Cooper coach has been there now. Probably took over for Tortorella.
Yep.
He's a good coach, and there's an awful lot of ex-New York Rangers on that squad. But I got to tell you, when I saw that 48-11, that's like Montreal Canadiens 1970s.
I know, and they're loaded with talent. But would they lose in the finals last year or 2 years ago or something?
Right.
But that's how close these guys are. They got a lot of talent. You're right. I mean, they're a formidable team. Right?
So watch out for them. But we'll, like I said, once the Stanley Cup playoffs start getting nearer, we'll discuss it more in detail.
Yep.
Yep.
But I just wanted to make sure we touch base on the hockey scene too, because that's coming up. So
yeah.
We'll move on real quick. I guess the NBA. Obviously, the big story last night was LeBron James moving into 4th place, right, passing MJ. Which to us, was there a better player that we ever saw than Michael Jordan?
No.
Right, so that's kind of a milestone.
We caught the tail end of Wilt Chamberlain, maybe about, after he squired at least 4,500 women, before he eclipsed the 5,000. But I'm just saying, from a pure dominance, Wilt, obviously the numbers speak for themselves, and the fact that he's not even in that top 4 is kind of surprising, I think.
And why it's so surprising is because he scored 30 some odd points for 80 games, and the next best record in the league was 60 games or some crazy thing. Like this guy scored 100 points in Hershey, Pennsylvania.
Absolutely.
I mean, it was crazy.
No doubt.
I'm a little surprised by that too.
Yeah.
So I guess next up on the list is Kobe Bryant.
Yeah, but back to LeBron James. There was an interesting stat last night when he passed him. Obviously the comparison between Jordan and James, and that's for a different day.
Yeah.
But Michael Jordan, he did it in 118 less games, meaning MJ got to 32,292, and James just passed him. So James now has 32,311. But I thought that was interesting. It took Michael 118 less games. That's a little significant, I think.
And you know what? When you think about all the points he scored, one of the most impressive things of all time was when he dished it. He talked to Steve Kerr and said, "I'm going to throw you the ball. You're going to make the shot."
Right.
He made it. They won the championship. So that's an assist that was
Yeah.
Bigger than all 32,000 points he scored.
So we can do a whole show on that comparison of James and Michael Jordan, but the number one leader. Does James surpass Kareem at some point? Kareem's got 38,387.
Probably.
Karl Malone 36,928, and then Kobe Bryant at 33,643. So that's a gimme.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't be surprised if James eclipsed Kareem.
Well, they said if he stays in the league until 2022 or something, he'll do it. So he's got at least three more
then
years.
The counter argument too is, does he just fill out this 3 years with LA and pack it in, man?
He still seems formidable as a player. I mean, but all these young kids, we talked about this last time, Giannis and all these other kids, these young kids, they're starting to take over the NBA.
No, sure.
And
but LeBron's having a tough year. It's new to him, that's for sure. But he's got young. He just doesn't have. He doesn't have the support system of these Cavalier teams as dominant as. Now let's face it, these Cavalier teams stunk, man. And then LeBron comes in. And for him to carry him on the back, get to the final, I think he's been in the finals, 6 or 7 consecutive years?
8.
Something, yeah, maybe.
8.
Could be.
8 years.
So LeBron's getting an early vacation this year because they are not making the playoffs. The Lakers are in absolute disarray. They have to get Anthony Davis. I don't know if they will. But
I think
there's a lot of dissension in that.
And I think by us seeing, he's going to be on the sidelines watching the playoffs for the first time in 8 years. Yes, they're going to make some overhauled, crazy changes. This isn't going to happen.
No, Luke Walton is gone. There's no question that he will be.
And why? Because LeBron James wants him gone.
Wants to handpick his own coach. And Magic will obviously sign off.
Of course. So.
To be continued in La La Land.
Yep. So let's move on to something. Let's move on to a couple of we'll talk about Major League Baseball and obviously the Harpers in Philadelphia now. And I thought it was pretty interesting about this. He wants Mike Trout, right? What was the headline? Trout fishing, right?
That's a good one.
So is that tampering? Is it tampering like it was LeBron James saying I want Anthony Davis? I don't think so. Just saying, hey, I'd like to have Mike Trout play on my team.
Yeah, I don't think Harper's intention was tampering. I think it's just more recruiting. But you do have to walk a fine line. I think with when you talk about another team's players. We were discussing and we have spoke on about this on the show recently. What's Trout going to do, right? So he's going to be a free agent after 2020. There's really two options. If it's all about the money, I think the Angels are not letting him out the door. But if he wants to come home, especially with this Harper contract,
it's either New York or it's either Yankees or Phillies.
No,
right?
It's Philly. He's a Philly guy. He's a South Jersey Philly guy. There's no question. And the fact that Harper signed the deal he did to have that $25 million average on his salary, there's a window there that the Phillies can offer Trout a ton of money, and if he wants to come home, I would not be surprised if he winds up in Philly. And so there's really two options: staying in California with the Angels, and they open the vault.
Which I think they're going to do. I mean,
they're going to make it.
But you're right. It's going to come down. Is it the money, or does he want to? He's not going to win a World Series in California with the Angels.
No.
It doesn't appear to be, at least in the next 2 years.
No, I don't think so.
So he's going to be a little frustrated because his legacy is going to go down. He doesn't want to go down like Dan Marino is one of the greatest quarterbacks ever who never won anything, kind of thing.
No, I agree.
So we'll see about that. But Steve, you brought something up about one of the greats of Major League Baseball, who's kind of, and we're going to transition over into this. We always recognize some of the prominent players in sports history, and take it away with the Major League Baseball guy who's I guess, in distress.
Yeah,
Right?
listen, I mean, this news just broke literally only a couple hours ago, and I was very saddened by it. Tom Seaver is unfortunately suffering from dementia at age 74, and so much so that he's literally retiring from public life in a statement from his family.
Oh,
So it really has to be
bad.
real bad. And, you know, the Mets are celebrating their 50th year, the celebration of the 69.
And without
So,
him there, it's
well,
almost,
but I just saw
incomplete.
highlights again, and we've seen highlights of Tom Seaver on and on throughout our lives, but I just saw another one of him just blowing a fastball by somebody in 69. So Tom Seaver was the 67 Rookie of the Year,
Yep.
the 69 Cy Young Award winner. He had 25 wins that year for the Miracle Mets, right? He was a 12-time All-Star. He had 3 Cy Youngs. He had 311 wins, 3,640 strikeouts, and he led the league in strikes out 5 times.
And one almost, I think he was close to the almost unanimous Hall of Fame.
Yeah, so
right?
he was elected in 1992
Yeah.
to the Hall of Fame, and at the time, up until recently, until Ken Griffey eclipsed him with the percentage, he was at 98.8%, and
And subsequently,
the
Rivera.
closest to getting to 100%, obviously Ken Griffey, and now we talked about Mariano with the unanimous. But I just wanted to shout that out, not just to Met fans, but to all baseball fans.
Absolutely.
Tom Seaver is a class act, absolute Hall of Famer, and we wanted to recognize Tom, and hopefully, you know, he lives the rest of his years, you know, comfortably.
And what was, one of the coolest things about Tom Seaver, I always remember, like an image watching him pitch, is the dirt on his knee from when he
Absolutely.
delivered the ball.
Yeah,
His right knee would actually hit the mound.
there's no question
And
about
at the end of the game, he had a big dirt spot on
Always.
his knee. I mean,
Yep, number 41.
Wasn't that awesome?
Iconic image.
Oh.
And he was, you know, when I, grow up playing baseball and I was a pitcher, he was, my coaches, I remember, you wanted to get that dirt on the knee because you wanted the follow through. And, I mean, he could bring it, man.
but he was the only one I ever remember from a vivid picture of him with a dirty knee at the end of the game. It was amazing.
Yeah, so again, we wanted to shout out to
Yep.
Tom Seaver, and then let's transition. There's another sports icon out there that's suffering as well. Nick Bonacani
Yep.
of Miami Dolphin fame, and unfortunately his son Mark was paralyzed while playing for the Citadel.
That's right.
And there's a documentary on HBO we highly recommend to our sports fans who haven't seen it.
And I always talk about, HBO's sports specials are phenomenal.
No, they
and
are.
this was, I think the title is The Many Lives of Nick Bonacani.
That is correct.
And-
And I'll let you take away your take on that.
All right. Well, I thought it was actually mesmerizing. I actually even used the term, it's almost Brian song-like. That's
Right.
how powerful this was. I mean, the many lives, when we talked about Nick Bonacani, Notre Dame guy, grew up in New York and,
Or
tough
Springfield,
family.
Mass. I think he was born in Springfield, Mass. Grew up in Massachusetts.
Right, but his
Right.
family owned, I think, a bakery and all
bakery.
kinds of stuff.
Correct. Yep.
And he was one of the first kids in the family to go to school. Goes to Notre Dame, and he had a brain. He was a smart
Law school.
guy.
Law school.
Goes to Notre Dame. Comes out, of course, always tagged with he's too small. He's this and that. Gets drafted by the Boston Patriots. Makes a mark. Ends up in Miami. Even Don Shula said, "This guy's too small. He can't play for us." And how prominent was he in the '72 undefeated season? And
Right.
amazing, just
Great career. Super Bowl winner. Anchor of the no-name defense.
Yep.
Great Hall of Fame football player, unquestioned.
And then he retires from football and becomes a lawyer, becomes a sports agent, becomes
Inside the NFL with Lenny Dawson. He was on HBO.
Right,
that
for like
23,
13, yeah.
23 years.
many years. And then of course, obviously, you brought up Mark Bonacani and the paralysis he suffered in that horrific game, and if we talk about Nick Bonacani, how could you not talk about the Miami project, right? I mean, what a legacy. Even he said he's on his last leg and said, my legacy is not playing football. My legacy is hoping to see all paralysis cured, and
Right.
he got everybody involved in this, and it's still going
And
on.
he didn't take no for an answer, and it's raised so much money and awareness, and I mean, what can you say? I found it poignant, really, about a father's love for his son, and would do anything to get him out of that chair and not have him in that chair. Really, just an emotional, powerful documentary, and we tip our hats to the Bonacani family.
And it's still going on. I mean, this whole Miami project, like, look how far they come. Like I said, you need to watch this documentary, whether you YouTube it or not. It's really powerful enough to say, this guy made a difference. Not just as a football player, but off the field, and all the people, all the people that are going through this, the people suffering from paralysis, they've made light year advances because of what he did.
Absolutely.
And it needed to be mentioned. And like I said, Steve and I were young, but we looked at Nick Bonacani and we watched those Dolphin teams, and it was phenomenal to see. But what happened off the field after that was just even almost more amazing.
Yeah.
Almost more amazing. Great stuff. Highly recommend. So let's transition from that to and Steve was bringing it up. Go back to high school. Obviously, we're St. Joe's guys again,
Right.
but there's some real prominent, and New Jersey wrestling is great. It's high profiled, and
Yeah.
the finals were down in Atlantic City, which they are every year. So tell us what happened.
Well, I tell you what, shout out to, again, our St. Joe's roots. There's a kid, Sammy Alvarez, out of Garfield, New Jersey. I thought this was just a very inspirational story. Sammy won the state championship down in Atlantic City at 126 pounds, and he beat the #1 ranked kid in the nation. This
Wow.
kid, Robert Howard, out of Bergen Catholic, and we'd like to shout out to him too. Had a great career. And these two are actually friends. They've wrestled a lot growing up. They battled. Howard beat Alvarez earlier in the year. Standard 3-2, 4-3 victories. But this kid, let me tell you something. He battled and battled and battled, and he won in they call it sudden victory. So these two were even at the end of regulation, and Alvarez was able to make a move and get a quick 2 points.
And these are the best wrestlers in the nation,
And,
right?
and why it's so inspirational, I think, is the fact that Sammy Alvarez made the finals twice prior. Once at 106, lost in the state final, and then I think the following year at 113 pounds, lost in the final again. So that just goes to show, listen, perseverance,
Right.
hard work, dedication, and I just felt it necessary to shout him out. He finished his career, or finished the year 37-3. His career record is a very impressive 136-11, and the good news is he's going to college. He's going to go continue his wrestling career at North Carolina State for the Wolfpack.
Okay.
And once again, I'm looking forward to maybe meeting him when you and I go back to the school and patrol, the
Love
parking
to have
lot.
him on the show and talk
We
about
absolutely
it.
would love to have him
No question.
and talk about his experience. So I just wanted to make a shout out to him.
Because when
Congratulations.
when we talk about wrestling and so forth, right? What was always the the biggest, Dan Gable and Iowa State,
Gables, yeah,
right?
right.
And that's what kind of level these kids are at now.
Yeah.
So but now you're right. He's going to North Carolina State,
Right.
Michigan, and so it's so prominent now. It's way more
Right.
prominent than it was 30 years ago
Sure.
that these kids are playing wrestling, and That's great.
Yeah, and Sammy is actually the first state champion at St. Joe's, I think, since 2004. So a little drought there for the Green Knights on the wrestling mat.
Yeah.
So hopefully that's just great news. And again, a shout out to him and his family.
Awesome. So listen, that's awesome. So, let's talk. First of all, I want to shout out to our sponsors again, right? Because they've been loyal, and Lynch Toyota of Manchester, Connecticut has been with us all along, and of course Harley Davidson of Utica and D. Filippi's Bakery and so forth, and we thank them. And I've had a lot of inquiries from other businesses that really want to be part of our show and sponsor it. So thanks to them, and shout out to those guys.
Absolutely, thank you, sponsors.
And listen, a couple of things. Steve and I were just thinking about it because, we're not gonna do much without our fan base, and our fan base means everything to us. So we're gonna do a little segment at the end of each show this time around called Shout Out segment, right? And it's the people that are loyal listeners and people that help us along and so forth. And I'm gonna let Steve give our first shout out.
Right, so our first shout out is going to be to my former college roommate at Boston University, Mitch Wilson. And Mitch has been very supportive of us, and we thank him for that. And Mitch actually is a successful broadcaster himself. Mitch has started his own site about 10 years ago. I would love everybody to go check it out. It's called the Sports Chat Place, and you can find it at sportschatplace.com. And Mitch's forte is handicapping games, everything from pro to college, and he's been very successful. And we're looking to have Mitch as a guest on the show when he can fit it into his schedule, and I would think that would be probably in a week or two. And so, Mitch, thank you for your support going forward and what you've done for us.
Certainly do. Thank you, Mitch.
And then we'll look forward to having, shout out to our other audience members out there as we want to build a following. And again, just say thank you to our friends and family and listeners and so on and so forth.
And like I said, I've checked out sportschatplace.com, and it's quite nice.
It is.
And it's quite broad. He covers a lot of space and so forth. And
yes, he does.
He really knows what he's talking about, and I look forward to having him on our show because he's going to add a lot of insight to our show. So
absolutely.
But anyway, thanks for joining us. It's been a great show, and Steve, like I said, we'll throw our best wishes out to Tom Seaver, Nick Bonacani, and so forth, like we brought up. And we look forward to having you guys on our show and listening to us continuously. And we're going to sign off now, but we'll be in touch with you shortly.
Thanks, everybody. Have a great week.
Okay.
Okay. Bye-bye.